Today's witness is called Gideon. He's in his early 60s, a broad, muscular man with heavy arms and hands, rather bald, but with vigorous side hair and beard, a humorous, weather-beaten face with hazel eyes below big eyebrows, a deep, warm voice with a rough Galilee accent. This is Gideon. His witness is of a Roman used to giving orders who made a formal request and was a lesson to all. I have lived all my life here in Capernaum. It suits me. My family have been boat builders for generations, and it was my uncle too. The lake, or as some people call it, the Sea of Galilee, gives a living to many people, certainly to folk who build and repair boats. I've never travelled much, never been to Jerusalem or Jericho or Caesarea, never seen the Salt Sea or even the Great Sea, which is nearer, but plenty happens or has happened over the years in Capernaum or nearby, more than people might think. It's not a big place, but it's a market town, a tax collection centre, and a Roman military post. Plenty goes on. I suppose what really put us on the map was Jesus. When they threw him out of Nazareth, where he was born, he came here to live. Good lesson. Never try to impress your hometown. I don't think he would have impressed as much. We were never short of preachers, but he began to perform those remarkable cures. You listen in a different way to a man like that. I knew a number of the people he healed. One of the first, Peter's mother-in-law, was a distant relation of mine. Peter and Andrew and their father before them all used boats made in our yard. Boats take a fair time to build, and your customers become your friends. I was at Peter's wedding. Great big fellow and tiny little wife. Lovely little person his wife is. Very capable, very level. I remember very well when Peter and Andrew and the Zebedee boys joined the carpenter. Very well. Though it must be nearly 10 years. It caused quite a disturbance, especially in old man Zebedee's life. Unbroken line of fishermen, the Zebedees, for God knows how many generations. Great place for a gossip. A boatyard. You get to hear everything. And I knew all the parties concerned in that first joining Jesus, or the carpenter as we called him. I knew the taxman Levi, or Matthew as he's now known. Well, everyone knew the taxman. He was better than most of them. A hard man, obstinate and unbending. He changed a lot, you know, after he gave up his job to follow the carpenter. Wonderful speaker the carpenter was, and he had good, simple things to say, although some of his parables were difficult until he explained. But as I say, it was the healing, the cures, the making people well again that first made him famous. One of these healings I was a bit involved in. Remarkable business altogether, because the doctor, as it were, never met the patient, never touched him or laid eyes on him. I knew the patient, although not very well. He was house servant to a friend of mine, an army officer. The Roman garrison in Capernaum numbered at that time about 200 men. 2 centuries, as they were called, under 2 officers, or centurions. My friend was one. He'd been in the town a long time, a very well-respected man indeed. Very good at getting people working together, very philanthropic. We have a few synagogues in Capernaum that we owe almost entirely to his leadership and energy. And he wasn't a Jew. He shifted to Cyprus about 2 years ago, just after Pilate was sent home. I miss him. Not Pilate, my friend. Nobody misses Pilate. My friend, whose name was Caspius, and I became friends not long after he came to the town. We are much the same age. I learned a lot from him. He was a better educated man than I, and interested in everything. We spent a lot of time together. We went together to hear the carpenter, when he gave his great speech up on the hill. What's the sermon called? The Sermon on the Mount. My friend was deeply impressed. I thought it very dangerous stuff in parts. For Jesus, I mean. I was right, as it turned out. Well, not long after this, Caspius told me his servant was very ill. He's been with me a long time, he said, and I'm very fond of him. Nothing seems to do him any good. Do you think the carpenter would help? Perhaps someone speak to him for him, me. Typical remark. Not false modesty, real modesty. A rare man. I went off right away. It wasn't difficult to find people to speak for Caspius. We went as a group and told Jesus about him, how he'd built a synagogue for the town, how fair he was in all his dealings. Jesus listened and said he'd come immediately. I ran on ahead and told Caspius, who immediately and very unexpectedly became agitated. No, he said, go and tell him I didn't mean him to come in person or to go to any trouble, just to give the order and that will do it. Tell him I know about orders. I'm a soldier and I've taken orders and given orders all my life. I had to learn authority from men. He has it from God. Quick, he said, go and stop him. Tell him just to give the order. It will be enough. And he pushed me out of the home. Jesus was just crossing the marketplace now with a big crowd. I gave the message word for word. The carpenter listened. Then he turned to the crowd and repeated it. Then he said, I've never met faith like this anywhere. He seemed full of wonder and sort of happiness. He walked back the way he had come and the crowd followed. I went back to Caspius with one or two others. We found him in his servant's room, helping him to get dressed, although he needed no help. He was a bit pale, but perfectly well and lively. Rather apologetic about neglecting his duties. Caspius smiled and looked at us. He didn't look very surprised.